here.
According to the primary leaving examination results released yesterday, more than 730,000 candidates qualified to join Senior 1 or vocational institutions across the country. However, the Minister of Education and Sports, Janet Museveni, expressed concern over the growing number of ungraded candidates, which stands at 77,080 learners who sat for the exams.
When releasing the next sets of PLE results, we must get answers as to why we have many ungradable candidates in a school or schools in each local government, where such a school has a head teacher, teachers, an inspector of schools, and a district education officer on the government payroll.
Education experts have weighed in on the issue, attributing the high number of ungraded candidates to several factors, including learning gaps, teacher shortages and challenges in school supervision. The General Secretary of the Uganda National Teachers Union, Philbert Baguma, says the problem begins much earlier in the education cycle and requires long-term structural solutions.
First of all, a learner who is ungraded in P7, we need to find out, was this learner attending all the time, or this learner reached P7 as a result of automatic promotion? Every year you move, regardless of whether you passed or not. Now, at the end of the day, if you are ungraded, then you have to look back and see what happened exactly. Scoring A, scoring 4 does not mean that you have attained quality education. So there is also need to look at how do we grade the learners. If you have studied for 7 years, is it fair for you to be judged within 2 hours of the examination and someone says you are ungraded, you are a failure in two hours when you have studied for 7 years?
Baguma has also dismissed claims from some quarters that last year's teacher strike, which occurred shortly before the examinations, negatively affected learners' performance and contributed to the high number of ungraded candidates.
In our setup of the teaching learning process, even a learner who is in P6 can do primary 7 and get first grade. And therefore, the industrial action that took 30 days cannot be a reason for having a learner ungraded.
Meanwhile, Patrick Kaboyo and Unitu's Philbert Baguma also shared their views on the ministry's proposal to dismiss head teachers and district education officers over ungraded candidates.
Marks are not manufactured. They are as a result of what has taken place. And you cannot say the head teacher has made learners to fail, or the teacher has made the learners to fail, or the DEO has not supervised it. There are other players within the teaching learning process. Obviously, we have to ask ourselves so many questions. And therefore, at the end of the day, you will find that the performance of the learners is dependent on so many aspects, depending on the key roles from the key stakeholders, who has done what and who has not done what.
There has to be a thinking whether you need to keep officials of government in the teaching fraternity as permanent and pensionable. They could adopt a contractual system that teachers and those who head them should have contracts that are signed and renewed, let's say after every 5 years, to see that there is value for money, but also to avoid complacency and taking things for granted.
Releasing the results, the minister also expressed concern over the growing number of male candidates dropping out of school.
The proportion of the boys completing this cycle has been decreasing. Is this purely a demographic matter, or are more boys than girls indeed dropping out of school? Either way, it is important that we establish an evidence-based explanation for this trend.
Yes, the ministry might be interested in finding out. But there are obvious cases, and it has not started this year. The only difference in this year is that there are more girls who completed than boys. And yet, we have been following up the issue of the girl child. That simply means we have neglected the boy child, and now our focus should be, as a country, we need to focus on both the boy and the girl child.
We need to check whether it has an effect on the rampant and the increasing industry as the border that attracts boys of all ages without restrictions, but also is to make school interesting so that those boys who drop out learn to keep in school and also appreciate the value of education.
Examination malpractice continues to pose a major challenge for the Uganda National Examinations Board and the Ministry of Education and Sports. This year, results from schools in 7 districts, Kisoro, Kampala, Mukono, Namutumba, Kasanda, Buyende and Kaliro, have been withheld due to alleged examination malpractice. Education experts say unless strict enforcement, community involvement and learner support mechanisms are strengthened, the vice is likely to persist.
If we had a regulator, they would say, okay, you as a teacher, you as a school, it is alleged you did this. They would do their own investigations outside these normal bureaucratic investigations, and they would say, we have penalized you. You as a school don't operate for the next 2 years. And you would see whether there is a school which can risk to lose out on business. And therefore, the most important thing is to make sure that we enforce the laws, the policies and the regulations, and examination malpractice will come to an end. And then this competition also gears up the malpractice.
We've heard that there are results that have been withheld. I think the solution to withholding of results is to operationalize the national teacher policy. 7 years ago, the policy proposes putting in place the National Teacher Council. Much as the Institute for National Teacher Education is in place, united, it has to do a lot of work to ensure that the courses designed attract teachers who have the moral focus that cannot allow cheating to take place, or they should design courses that help them to ensure that they are morally and ethically acceptable in those schools, so that the cheating reduces. But again, in terms of reward and sanctions, it should be the role of the teacher council to ensure that those culpable are put to book.
Without decisive action, they warn that the challenges facing Uganda's education system are likely to persist, with long-term implications for the country's human capital development. Benjamin Jumbe, NTV Weekend Edition.